Coronation Street favorite begins to realize Theo is abusive as the grim wedding aftermath unfolds. The following article contains spoilers from the March 25th episode of Coronation Street. It has not yet aired on ITV1, but is already available to watch on ITVX. George Shuttleworth is getting dangerously close to uncovering the truth about Theo Silverton in Coronation Street. George has never exactly warmed to Theo, but he also understood that Todd Grimshaw was never going to walk away from the relationship simply because others thought Theo was bad news. Until now, George has tried to respect Todd's choices and avoid crossing any personal boundaries. However, that has become increasingly difficult, especially after witnessing several worrying moments involving Theo that have left him seriously troubled. In yesterday's episode, George and Christina Boyd were stunned to find out that Theo and Todd had reunited. The pair had previously split because Theo claimed they were no longer happy together. After the breakup, Todd had been left confused by how suddenly things ended. Even so, he had made an effort to move forward, something both George and Christina had noticed and supported. Theo eventually managed to force his way back into Todd's life after causing him to miss the marathon he had spent months preparing for. Taking advantage of Todd's emotional vulnerability, Theo asked for another chance, and Todd agreed. In an effort to convince George and Christina that he had changed, Theo invited them both out for lunch. While at the bistro, he spoke about wanting to be a better partner and making more of an effort with the people who matter most to Todd. Although George and Christina listened to what he had to say, they could not hide how uneasy and unconvinced they felt. Later, in a private moment, they agreed to simply go along with things for now, hoping Todd would eventually realize he deserved much better. What they did not know was that Theo had already been secretly putting together a surprise that would tie him and Todd together permanently. In today's episode, Theo arrived at the funeral parlor dressed smartly and clearly prepared for something significant. He then whisked Todd away and brought him to a registry office where he revealed that they were about to get married. Serving as witnesses to the wedding were Gary Windus and Maria Connor, both of whom believed Theo's surprise gesture was thoughtful and romantic. But for viewers, the ceremony was deeply unsettling to watch. As Theo read out his wedding vows, which stretched to an entire A4 page, Todd sat there with visible fear in his eyes, while forcing a smile to avoid raising suspicion. Actor Gareth Pierce delivered a remarkable performance, capturing two completely different emotions at once. To everyone else in the registry office, Todd looked like a man overwhelmed by a grand romantic gesture. But to the audience, his expression told a far darker story. This was someone trapped, terrified, and silently crying out for help. Later, back at the pub, Gary and Maria encouraged everyone to celebrate the newly married couple. The news left George, Christina, Summer Spellman, and Sarah Platt shocked as they struggled to process the fact that one of their closest friends had got married without telling them. While most of Todd's friends tried to be pleased for him, George and Summer found themselves growing even more uneasy. To them, the entire situation felt strange and only strengthened George's belief that something was very wrong. Christina pointed out to George that he was beginning to speak as though Theo had actually pressured Todd into marrying him. And deep down, George was starting to wonder if that might be exactly what had happened. In tomorrow's episode, George's fear that Todd could be in serious danger will grow even stronger. His concerns deepen after he overhears Theo viciously ranting and hurling abuse through the bathroom door. Believing Todd is the one inside, Theo lets his mask slip and begins tearing into him. But when Todd later returns from the shop and George is revealed to be standing there, Theo is left quietly horrified by what he has just exposed. The big question now is, what will George do next? Coronation Street reveals how Theo is finally exposed in early ITVX episode. Coronation Street's Theo Silverton finally makes a crucial mistake tonight when he launches into a stream of abuse, aimed at Todd Grimshaw, not realizing that George Shuttleworth is close enough to hear everything. The tense scene unfolds when George visits Todd at the flat, determined to get some answers after the shocking surprise wedding that took place the day before. When Theo later comes home, he hears movement coming from the bathroom and immediately assumes Todd is in there. Acting exactly as viewers have come to expect, he starts making cruel and cutting remarks about Todd's appearance in an effort to chip away at his confidence even further. But the situation takes a dramatic turn when Todd suddenly arrives back at the front door after stepping out to buy tea bags. Theo is left completely stunned when George then steps out of the bathroom, visibly shaken by the abuse he has just overheard. "It's funny, isn't it?" George says. "You can go to bed with Dr. Jekyll, but wake up with Mr. Hyde." Although George stops short of fully confronting Theo in that moment, aware that doing so could make things worse for Todd, he does not stay silent for long. Soon afterwards, he reaches out to Summer Spellman and tells her what has really been happening behind closed doors. "That wasn't a wedding," George says as he reflects on Theo's disturbing stunt from the previous day. "That was a kidnapping." He also points out that for such a major occasion, Todd only had Gary and Maria there with him. According to George, Todd would have wanted the people closest to him, especially George and Summer, by his side. Summer then asks George whether he truly believes Theo could ever become physically violent towards Todd. George gives a deeply worrying reply, admitting that he fears the answer is yes. "I'm afraid I do," he says, "if he hasn't already." In George's eyes, Todd has been emotionally all over the place for the last 5 or 6 months. George reminds Summer that they are effectively the only real family Todd has left. Because of that, he insists they have to do everything they can to get him away from Theo before things become even worse. Later on, Todd receives a kind and supportive message from George, offering him somewhere safe to stay because he clearly is not secure living with Theo. But rather than accept the help, Todd chooses to ignore the message and carry on pretending everything is fine. Still, with Todd's loved ones now beginning to gather around him and piece the truth together, the question remains, could this finally be the beginning of Theo's downfall? Meanwhile, Natalie Anderson is reportedly returning to Coronation Street next month to reprise her role as Danielle Silverton. Danielle, who is Theo's ex-wife, was last seen on the cobbles back in September. According to The Sun, the actress is set to return in the wake of Theo being exposed as a serial abuser.